Hello, hello. I want to welcome all of you to another hour of some of the stuff that it's hard to find and other places than right here on this radio station and this radio show. This is the show for the thinking global citizen. And we have a very insightful and very exciting guest with us today. We are going to be talking about the paranormal and psychic abilities because he is Russel Targ, and he was running the program for the CIA on the remote viewing for about 20 years, and he has written several books, and he's got a brand new movie coming out dealing with these kinds of stuff. So let's lend you his ear because this is going to be interesting. And then a little housekeeping for those of you that want to hear this show again. You can go to where we archive it, and that is at universal-consciousness-show.com. And we are on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. You can find us there also. And of course, when you are already on YouTube, please subscribe to the videos because this is how we get to spread the good word out there. And also like us on Facebook. And remember that this station is member and listener supported. So please, by the time you leave, click the donate button and do whatever you can to support this station. Now, this is going to be interesting because Russel Targ is a physicist, he's a parapsychologist, and one of the initial people that put together the remote viewing program for the CIA that lasted for 20 years. And he's also an author of several books and a lecturer on remote viewing, psychic abilities, and what makes it all possible. The actually the non-locality of everything that we see around us, the mind, not just the brain. But he also has produced a documentary that is right about now being released, and that's called Third Eye Spies, and we want to hear some more about that. And then, Russel Targ, welcome to the show.
Hello, I'm very happy to be with you. I'm excited about my film. The film is the culmination of 5 years of shooting pictures, interviewing people, and analyzing psychic abilities. So the film is very exciting. Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, the film is very exciting because we were able to get our CIA contract monitors on camera, looking into the camera and saying, yes, we were there, psychic abilities are real, and we saw the things that Targ described. So it's very rare that you get somebody besides the psychics or the researchers to say so, but here we have the CIA on camera saying that what we did over our 2 decades was actually true, and not only that, but useful. So we were able to find a downed Russian airplane, kidnapped American prisoners, a Soviet bomb factory in Russia. We even helped find Patricia Hearst. So we had a wide variety of applications in addition to trying to understand how psychic ability works.
Yeah, and I know that my co-host over in Germany, Diana over there, she had an initial question for you. Well, how this, Diana, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, of course. Hello, everyone. Hello, Russell, and thank you so much for being here today. I know you have a lot of knowledge to share. So just for the beginning, can you please start by telling us first what brought you on this path?
Oh, that's a long story because I knew from a childhood that I wanted to be involved in psychic abilities. As a 8 or 10-year-old, I used to play cards with my friends and my parents, and I often knew what card was going to come up in advance. And we know now that that's a little clairvoyance or maybe precognition. But I had the idea that it was some kind of magical thing, because people, even 80 years ago, people knew that there was some magic available. And by the time I was a teenager, I was doing magic on stage. There's pretending magic, pretending to read people's minds. And even though what I was doing was a trick, occasionally true information would come to me where I had a opportunity to look into the person's house or where they lived and describe something beyond the trick I was doing. So by the time I was a teenager in high school, I had the idea that it's time to give up pretend magic and understand something about psychic abilities. So I've been doing this now for about 60 years, studying ESP, learning what the mystics did in India thousands of years ago, and learning what researchers have done all over the world today. And then in 1972, I gave up my career as a laser researcher. I started lasers before there were any lasers. So I was a laser pioneer in the late 1950s. So I did that for 15 years, and then I was willing to bet my career that I could teach people how to get in touch with their psychic abilities. And I convinced the CIA and NASA to help me start a program at Stanford Research Institute. And that program ran 20 years. We taught all sorts of people how to do psychic things, quiet their mind and look into the distance. And we even taught enough people in the Army how to be psychic that they set up a similar ESP applications program in Virginia. And that was a kind of psychic Army Corps where I personally taught the 6 pioneers in that group. So during the 70s, 80s, 90s, we were very influential as a little core of psychic applications and research in America. And what we're doing is we're teaching something called remote viewing, where a person learns to quiet their mind and look for the surprising pictures that come into their awareness. And with those pictures, you can begin to look into the distance and even look into the future. And we call this a non-local ability. The non-locality is very hot in modern physics. But the most interesting thing I can tell you, if you're only going to be with me for 5 minutes, and that is psychic ability is independent of distance and of time. That is, the accuracy and the reliability of psychic abilities are independent of how far away the person is and whether or not the event is simultaneous or in the future. So your quiet mind can really span the universe and describe anything there is to describe. And I invite you to do that.
So you actually...
And I wrote a book called The Reality of ESP.
Yeah.
So that gives you lessons on how to quiet your mind, how to separate the psychic signal, which is what you want, from the mental noise that interferes.
Yeah.
So the reality of mind gives you a step-by-step on how to get in touch with your psychic abilities.
Yeah. So you actually were able to prove that everything is connected, just like quantum physics is talking about now, that decades ago.
That's right. We think we had 2 parts of our program. One part was the application, where we were looking for American hostages in Russian airplanes. In fact, we begin our film with President Jimmy Carter on camera talking about how we found a downed Russian airplane in Africa. And he says that the CIA could not find it with satellite photography because the plane had crashed in the jungle, but a psychic in California was able to quiet her mind and mark a circle on a map so the helicopter could go exactly where this plane had crashed and collect all the code books and other good stuff on the airplane.
Mm.
So we have the testimony from a president that what we were doing was not only real, but it was useful.
Wow. Yeah, I know that the mind is totally different things than what the brain is. And I think with your mind there is probably what you found that I'm not so sure the brain had all that much to do with it, did it?
No, we think the brain is like jello in your head, and the mind is outside. The mind is like a transducer from the universe outside to the brain inside. The mind is independent of distance. The great German physicist Erwin Schrödinger, said consciousness is a singular of which there is no plural. What that means is that all our minds are connected together, and the idea of many minds is a mistake. It's like he said, many minds. The idea of many minds is like mirrors in a fun house, the reflection. But our mind is independent of space and time, and that's what our data shows. So when you say that we did applications, finding people, finding hostages, and so forth for the CIA, and we published our findings in the premier scientific journal in the world. We published our first findings in an article in Nature magazine in England, which is a distinguished journal, as you know, and then we published a lengthy summary of our work in the Proceedings of the Electrical Engineering Society in America, which is a place I would normally publish my laser papers. So the Institute of Electrical Engineers knew me already. I had published many papers in the IEEE. So this was we call this paper information transmission through without sensory connection, independent of sensory distance.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounded like a microwave paper, and they said, sure, we can publish that.
Yeah, and that's probably what you are talking about in that new movie that is coming out. You probably got a lot of those incidents covered in there, don't you?
Oh yeah, we show many things like that in the film. As we had one of the first person I chose from the Army to show remote viewing is a great psychic who's alive today named Joe McMoneagle, and I sat with him in our little soundproof booth and said, "Okay, Joe, your colonel has gone to hide someplace in the San Francisco Bay Area. I've no idea where he is. What do you see? Quiet your mind and tell me about the pictures that come into your awareness," is exactly what I would say, and then draw that. And he made a little sketch of a long, low, horizontal building, and then a tall building in front that was light and dark with pillars. And he said it looked like a piano keyboard with the light and the dark. And in fact, where they had gone was the Stanford University Art Museum, which has a tall pillared portion in front and a long, low portion behind with a fountain that he also drew. So that was Joe's very first #1 remote viewing, and he went on to a lifetime career of finding oil wells and lost children, and he's now helping with the Monroe Institute in Virginia. So Joe has carried out for 20 years his remote viewing that he learned with us at Stanford, and there's no decrease in his ability.
Yeah.
But with things like, with boring experiments like guessing cards, people may be able to do it at first, but then the ability goes away as people get bored with the experiments. But we were able to give people exciting things to do, like finding submarines and airplanes, and the hostages that were captured in Iran during the revolution. We had to look in on one of the American hostages who were prisoners of the Iranians.
Yeah.
And our psychic said, this guy is really very sick, and he can hardly walk. But I see him leaving soon. He's going to go away. I see him on an airplane. And, of course, we didn't know who we were looking for. The Navy captain just brought us an envelope, and there's a picture of somebody. Tell me about the guy in the envelope. and we said there's this very sick man in the dark who can't walk, but he's going to be out in the light and he's going to fly away. And indeed, this was Ambassador Queen, American ambassador to Iran, and the Iranians released him within 3 days of us looking in, and he went off to Germany to the hospital, and he lived for many years after that.
Yeah.
So we had all sorts of quite surprising, detailed tasks to do, and it shows what you can do when you quiet your mind.
Yeah, I'm wondering though, the psychic abilities to some degree, everybody has it, but are there some people that is better at others than this, or is it something that everybody can do with the right training?
It's like a musical ability. Everybody can learn to play the piano somewhat. There was a time in America where every little house had a piano in the living room where people would get together at Christmas and sing, and there were people who could play Christmas carols on the piano. And some of the people were very good, and some of them became concert pianists, and some of them didn't. But more or less, anybody who wanted to learn the piano could learn to play a little bit. So ESP is like a musical ability. There's some are very talented, and a few who can't do it at all. But by and large, there's a curve of ability that goes from psychic superstars to people who would be tone deaf. But in our experience, basically anybody who finally discovers where our lab was and wants to take part in experiments, they're motivated because they've had some ability. So almost everybody who came to our laboratory did pretty well, and some of them did excellently. And when I've done workshops, for example, I did workshops after I left SRI. I was doing workshops all over the world, and people would have to pay, of course. And what I would say to my audience, where I'd have 30 or 40 people, I said, I will guarantee that everybody here will either do something psychic or see something psychic. If that doesn't happen, we'll give you your money back. And we never had nobody ever asked for their money back. Every student that I've ever had either did something psychic or worked with a partner who did something psychic. So everyone felt that this was worthwhile.
Yeah.
Because remote viewing is basically a natural ability that is it's much easier to do remote viewing than playing the piano. Remote viewing is a ability like breathing or riding a bicycle. No, you don't have. No one has to teach you to ride a bicycle. If you're a teenage person and sit on a bicycle, and somebody gives you a little push, you'll ride it away. You have the innate ability to balance on a bicycle. So what I'm doing is teaching remote viewing is very easy. I just have to set the stage, find a quiet room, tell people that they're able to do them, and perhaps show some pictures of other people who've learned to do remote viewing, and then give them an opportunity, and people can do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just wondering also, in your when you were working with the CIA on this, CIA, they are a very secretive and strange organization. Did they ever ask you to remote view something that could have connections to an alien installation or something on another planet or ETs or anything like that?
No, I had no aliens. I did have another planet, though, when we were working for NASA. See, my introduction to NASA is I went to a conference on speculative technology on St. Simon's Island, which is in the ocean just offshore of the state of Georgia. And there's a big NASA conference, and Werner von Braun was there. And I had a ESP teaching machine, which is a random number generator that allows you to practice your psychic abilities. And to digress for 1 minute, my ESP game is online at the Apple Store, and it's a free game called ESP Trainer.
Yeah.
And that helps you get in touch with your psychic abilities by offering you practice which of the 4 squares is going to light up when you push the button. And if you don't have that special feeling, you can press the pass button, and it will show you the correct answer and not charge you for the trial. So the idea is you learn what it feels like when you're doing psychic functioning to get away from guessing. So you learn what it feels like, and then you make an actual trial only when you have that special feeling. And people learn to do this. Like a lot of people writing to me after playing with this game called ESP Trainer, and at the iTunes Store as a free application. The idea that I'm a Buddhist, and consequently I should not charge for teaching the Dharma. The Dharma is the way the Buddhist view is called the Dharma is the way the world works. Yeah. And it would be not appropriate to charge to show people how the world works. So I give this is a very popular application. Hundreds of thousands of people have downloaded it, and I don't charge anything. So you can learn to learn to be psychic at no charge. It's my gift. So I was at a conference with Werner von Braun, and he did very well with this ESP game, and told the director of NASA, give these guys some money, let them start their program, because I had the idea that American astronauts could learn to psychically be in touch with their spacecraft so they could tell if something was the matter. That was my story. And NASA thought that was all right. So our first money, this program became called the Stargate program. So our first money from the Stargate program came from NASA. And the NASA administrator was in the office and said, we're going to send a rocket, a spacecraft off to Jupiter very soon, shortly, a Pioneer spacecraft. And Ingo Swann, who really started the ESP program. Ingo Swann was a great American psychic and painter. He was an oil painter. Painted inspirational, visionary. He was a visionary artist. So they asked Ingo, we're going to go to Jupiter with the spacecraft. Is there anything interesting we'll see there? And Ingo took a puff on his cigar and said, yeah, there is something interesting. As I look at Jupiter now from his little office in California, closes his eyes and looks at Jupiter, Jupiter is surrounded by a sizable ice crystal ring. So there's a whole circular ring around the planet of Jupiter. And the administrator said, you're thinking of Saturn, aren't you, Ingo? And Ingo said, just believe me, I know the difference between Saturn and Jupiter. I'm looking at Jupiter, and there's 1 or 2 fat rings around the planet Jupiter. He said, well, I'll let you know if we find anything like that. And about 18 months later, they got pictures back from Jupiter, and Ingo was the first person in the whole world who knew that there were rings around Jupiter. And if you look in my book, In the Reality of ESP, I show the drawings that Ingo made of his vision of the rings around Jupiter together with the NASA photographs of those rings. So the really important thing we learned from that is that distance is not a problem, because Jupiter is 500 million miles away. And that didn't interfere with Ingo's making very nice drawings. It also shows that when you're looking far away, you're looking independent of time, because Jupiter is 500 million miles away. Let's see, the sun is like 100 million miles away, and that's 10 light minutes. So Jupiter is almost a light hour away from Earth. That is, it takes light an hour to get from Jupiter to Earth, approximately.
Yeah.
But Ingo could see that instantaneously. He said, "Oh, you want me to look at Jupiter? Okay, I'll look at Jupiter." And he immediately started to spiel out the answer of what Jupiter looks like. So that shows, see, the Buddhist understanding of psychic abilities is that separation is an illusion for consciousness. He says that there is no separation in consciousness. And this is something that's been taught for 2,500 years.
Yeah.
The Hindus and but I don't want to take you too far off. Patanjali, for example, was a Hindu teacher, an Indian, about 400 years before Christ, and he wrote a book that's still available. It's called the Sutras of Patanjali. So it's always very nice that I'm an author, so I'm always happy when somebody's book stays in print for 2,400 years, still in print. And Patanjali says you can quiet your mind as you're searching for contact with the divine. He said you can quiet your mind and look into the distance, look into the future, heal the sick, and diagnose illness. But he's really a spiritual teacher. He's not interested in your psychic prowess. But he says these are called the Yoga Sutras that he wrote, and these powers are called siddhis, S-I-D-I-S. And he said, don't let these powers get in your way, because they're like stumbling blocks as you're trying to experience the divine. But I think I should tell you that as you make progress with your meditation, you're going to have these very interesting views of the future and views of the distance. And that was 2,400 years ago. So my purpose in telling you about Patanjali is that what I'm describing, the reality of ESP, is not New Age. This has been understood for 2,500 years now.
Yeah.
The Hindus and the Buddhists and the Taoists, the famous yin-yang symbol, the little circular drawing of the two half circles blended together, yin-yang symbol, was from Lao Tzu 2,500 years ago, showing that there is no separation. So that was understood and deeply ingrained in Hindu, Chinese, and Indian teaching thousands of years ago. And they went on and wrote books to describe in great detail how this works and how to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I see now that we are 1 minute away from the bottom of the hour where we need to take a break. And before we go to that break, may I ask you real quick, you still meditate probably and try to keep your abilities current, don't you?
I'm not a practicing. I don't meditate very much. I meditate when I'm anxious about something. When I want to quiet my mind, I'll sit down and breathe for a half an hour and just get quiet and focus on my breathing rather than my anxiety. But I do not have a regular meditation practice.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're at the bottom of the hour.
Anymore, I did have. I used to be very involved in the whole practice of meditation. I was doing meditation on breathing for years, but not so much anymore.
Yeah. Well, we're at the bottom of the hour, so let's go to break now, and we'll be gone for about 4 or 5 minutes, and then we will be back talking with Russel Targ again about the past, present, and future, what they discovered working for the CIA and for themselves.
There are days that the red pill is bitter in my stomach, but I can't get it back out. I think because I have to. I speak because I have no choice. I walk through this dark age we're in with open eyes. Listen to Open Eyes on latenightinthemidlands.com. And together, maybe we won't stumble and fall.
Data. The sensors can't penetrate the planet's ionosphere. There's too much interference. Can you find a way to scan for life forms?
I would be happy to, sir. I just love scanning for life forms. Life forms. You tiny little life forms. You precious little life forms. Where are you?
Even the ETs know this is the place to be. LNM Radio Network.
You can listen to the LNM Radio Network 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through the Paranormal Radio app. Available from lnmradionetwork.com or TalkStreamLive.com on both Android and Apple. Our call to listen line is open 24/7. Dial 701-719-9704 so you can listen on the go.
Ever wanted to be sure your robot slave was behaving? Is Echo getting out of control and meeting with Alexa when you're not around? You need RoboGrog. RoboGrog is the new product from Snooze You Lose, the company that also brought you the fine products of Flog a Horse and Calm You Down Now. RoboGrog will put your robotic minions to sleep, bringing their AI a sense of peace and comfort. It does this by sending bolts of electricity straight where the sun doesn't shine. Get RoboGrog today at any fine retailer and set yourself free from the devices that bind you.
You can't just throw someone into prison and silence their warning because you don't agree with them. You don't have to like my methods or what I stand for. Silencing me won't make the problem go away. It will just whittle away at the ability of people to be ready for the real threats. And when the worst happens, and it will, maybe you can take comfort in protecting the people from a dangerous radical who wanted to tell them the truth.
Tired of searching for great talk and great information? Look no more. LNM Radio Network, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Back home, there's a growing pro-Earth movement. Rumors of hate groups targeting aliens. And on all sides, the fanatics think that society has to be protected against anyone who's different. Starting to wonder if what we just saw is a preview of things to come.
Oh, I can't believe we'd be that foolish.
Santayana. Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it.
Hello, and we are back with the Universal Consciousness Show, and we're talking with Russel Targ, and we want to hear some more about his stories of what he has done during his lifetime of research into the mind and the psychic abilities and whatever is behind the curtain. So,
well, let me tell you that I was working for the CIA for 20 years, looking for hostages and downed airplanes and things like that, weapons factories in Russia and in China. And then I left the program because it became very classified and I couldn't publish anymore. It became top secret. So I went away, but nobody interfered with my using psychic abilities. I created a company called Delphi Associates, and one of the things we're doing is making psychic games, and my ESP Trainer came out of that. The ESP Trainer is this free application you can get from the iTunes store, no cost, to help you develop psychic abilities. But what stimulated my comments now is in your commercial break, there are several people saying, don't be afraid of your psychic abilities. You've got to be strong before people come after you. And my experience is that nobody ever came after me. I had to go to the CIA and tell them that I'm making a 2-hour documentary about all the secret work we did in the 70s and 80s. Will that be okay? And we went through Congress of the United States and through the CIA, and we got approval under Freedom of Information, and with the cooperation of 2 of our CIA contract monitors on camera saying, yes, the things that Targ described really happened. We were there, and he really did find the downed airplane, did locate the hostages. So in my personal experience, nobody has ever interfered with my talking about what we've done. So there's no reason to worry that I have no experience in my life of people coming after me because I'm doing psychic stuff or investigating psychic stuff.
Yeah.
So it's nothing to worry about here. The world is open and free. Psychic abilities are available for you to use them. And not only can the person take that away from you, but to the best of my knowledge is that nobody's trying to take it away from you.
Yeah, I imagine that each individual person have to kind of deal with themselves and develop themselves, and they don't necessarily have to go invade government buildings and stuff like that. They can just use it for their own purpose, and I think I think it's pretty safe. And I know, Diana, you had a question also.
Yes, Russell, I wanted to ask you about the movie that you mentioned, Third Eye Spy. Where is it available for the people in Europe?
I believe that we know that European distributors are interested in this, but right now we have a really terrific trailer coming attraction that you can see on the internet. If you just go to the website thirdeyespies.com, we have a 90-second trailer showing what we're doing, and they packed an amazing amount of material in 90 seconds. So I think you'll enjoy that and find it something worthwhile seeing. And to answer your question, I think that the film is going to be available by the middle of next month. The film is complete, is being shown to people, was shown at Cannes, had very good reviews at the Cannes Film Festival.
Oh. This is good. I will check it.
We don't know if it'll be in theaters, but it will be on digital platforms like YouTube and Netflix and Amazon and so forth. And I think all of that will happen. All of that will happen by next month.
Oh, that's good. So it will be in Netflix. That would be wonderful because the people here, they are using a lot of Netflix.
So you can have this right in your living room.
Yes.
But the coming attraction is surprisingly well made for 90-second TV flash. It is really very skillful selection from our film.
Yeah.
Very entertaining.
I saw that one, and it was a lot of information in it. And it was fun to watch because it opens your mind up to possibilities.
That's right. You take a look at this coming attraction. It makes you feel that, well, if all of this stuff is going on, maybe it's real. Maybe you should go and see the movie.
Yeah. Now,
In the
I
meantime,
know some of the
if
things
you want
that...
to learn to do this, my book, The Reality of ESP, describes the psychic spying that we did for the CIA, and it describes how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So the psychic abilities is not the property of the CIA. It's something you can do as well.
Yeah, that would be good to read. And now some of the stuff that you did, actually, from what you explained earlier, it kind of almost borders on astral travel. When I remember you mentioned on another show that you had you went and investigated something over in Russia with someone, and it looked like you were walking down the corridor, and that almost sounded like an astral travel trip, didn't it?
Like an out-of-body experience.
Yeah.
As the CIA came in, I was working with a very psychic woman named Hella Hammond. The interesting story about her is that she was a pretty well-known American photographer and a good friend of mine and my family. And the CIA wanted us to find somebody who was not a famous psychic to take part in our program. We worked with Ingo Swan, who began our program, and Pat Price, who is a psychic policeman and is one of our most remarkable people. And they said, can't you find us a control person who had never done this before? And I asked Hella if she would work with us as a control. And it turned out that in our formal experiments, Hella was the most statistically significant of anyone we ever tested in the laboratory. Mm-hmm. So we worked with, let me just say it, we worked with many famous psychics, and the control that we brought in turned out to be more psychic than anyone we had ever seen before. So that gave us an idea that psychic abilities are pretty democratic and may be spread over the whole population.
Yeah.
Now, in the experiment you're talking about, the CIA asked Hella and me, can you describe the office of Premier Brezhnev in the Kremlin? And normally we don't get a description like that. Normally we will be given something more vague, like where is somebody hiding? But here they said, can you describe what Brezhnev's office looks like? And of course, we had no idea what the answer to that was. And Ken Kress, who was a CIA person who gave us the task, also had no idea. It's not, people don't know. It's not like the Oval Office in the White House. Brezhnev's office in the Kremlin was pretty secret. But so Hella and I just sat down in our little workroom, comfortable workspace, and Hella said, well, I'm walking down a corridor, and it's all covered with red brocade and a red carpet. And at the end of the hall, the door is covered with red leather held in place by big brass upholstery tacks. But the door is closed. So I said, well, I'll open the door for you. And she said, okay, I see the door open, but it's still dark because it's like 9 hours ahead of us in California. So I said, well, I'll turn on the lights, and then we can see, as though we're cooperating in a lucid dream. Then she walks into this dark room ahead of me and says, it's dark. And I said, okay, I'll turn on the lights. And then the lights came on in her psychic mind, and she said, I see red squares outside in the windows to the left, and to the right is a very big wooden desk covered with a piece of glass. And behind that desk is a wooden wall with a door in it. So I said, okay, here we are. Let's open the door and see where the door leads. So we opened the door, and there was a stairway going down into the basement of the Kremlin, and we started walking down, and she was describing computer bays set off to the right of the stairs, and I began to feel frightened. That I had a lot of high clearances in the United States, but I was not cleared to be in the computer room of the Kremlin, and began to feel like a dangerous place to be. It's not that I decided it was dangerous, it felt dangerous. So I said, I think that we've given them enough information. Let's get out of here. And we ended the experiment. And 2 years later, I was done with the ESP program, and I was lecturing in Russia. And I actually got to lecture in the big auditorium in the Kremlin. And a funny thing was, somebody stood up and said, if what you say is true, Professor, doesn't that mean you can't hide anything anymore? Now, Russia, of course, is very concerned about things being hidden, a very fearful country. And I had to say, yes, that means you can't hide anything anymore. And I could hear all the little teacups shaking in the big auditorium. And my host said, was there anything you'd like to see while you're here? And I said, I would like to see where Premier Brezhnev sits. I don't need to meet the Premier of Russia. I would just like to have a peek at his office. So they took me long walk, and I walked down this hall that Hella described, and we got to see Brezhnev's office with the leather over the doors and the upholstery tacks, and we walked in, and just as she described, there's a big wooden desk on the right covered with glass, and the windows on the left looked out over Red Square. And I did not ask to go down the stairs in the computer room, but I thought the fact that she described this odd leather door covered with brass tacks was such an unusual thing that I was really convinced that I was now seeing again the thing that she had described 2 years before.
Yeah.
So you can say that Hella and I were very good friends, but it was as though we had a shared out-of-body experience where my good friend Hella and I went adventuring into the Kremlin.
Mm-hmm. I got one more thing that I want to mention to you, and that is, I remember when we talked on the phone, you told me also that you guys were able to predict the commodities market at one time, and it was so accurate that I need you to comment on that because it was so good.
Oh yeah, we were on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. When I left SRI, when I left Stanford, I created a company called Delphi Associates after the Oracle at Delphi. And one of the things we did was find a enthusiastic investor to work with us, and we had the idea that we could forecast the changes in the silver commodity market, which is a very volatile market, like the stock market today. Silver market was going up and down by big amounts as the Hunt brothers were trying to control it.
Yeah.
So every week on Monday, we would make a forecast, whether the psychic we were working with would make a forecast, is silver going to go up a little, up a lot, down a little, or down a lot? And he did that by describing the object that we would show him at the end of the week, so that the psychic was insulated from the actual stock market. What we actually did is that I would say, here we are on Monday. On Friday, we're going to hand you an object. Can you describe the object? And let's say that he says, I see something round and floppy with a funny smell, something he might say. So I said, thank you very much. I've got that. We then called the broker, and what we knew is that the broker had 4 objects on his desk corresponding to up a little, up a lot, down a little, down a lot. And each of those objects were potential things to show the psychic the next week. So I said, well, the guy described this funny object, round object with a funny smell, kind of floppy. And he said, well, my four objects here are a teddy bear, a coffee cup, a book, and my leftover pancakes from breakfast. And I said, well, it sounds like the psychic was describing your pancakes from breakfast. What does that mean? And he said, well, that object corresponds to the market going down a lot. So your leap of imagination now is that we sold $30,000 worth of silver. We sold $30,000 of silver into the market because the guy saw a leftover pancake instead of a teddy bear. And then at the end of the week, when the market went down, we showed him a pancake. So describing something going up or down is what we would call an analytical task, and that's very, very hard. So something important that I can tell you is that if you want to test psychic ability, the most difficult thing to do is guessing playing cards, because the four of diamonds is indistinguishable from the five of diamonds. Because all of us know what the cards look like perfectly. You got a perfect mental record of all the playing cards. And that memory and that imagination is the enemy of psychic abilities. It's what we call analytical overlay. And interestingly enough, this was known in the 8th century. The great Buddhist Dharma master, Padmasambhava, knew that you can't name or grasp something you're trying to experience because it makes noise in your mind. You've got to focus on natural things rather than analytical things. Memory and analysis and guessing is the enemy of ESP. You've got to have natural targets.
Yeah. I see now that we have 2 minutes left of the show, so give us a little more information about where they can get your books and also maybe something on your movie again and where they can get in touch with you.
So my book is called The Reality of ESP, and it's, of course, available from Amazon. Just look up my name, Russel Targ, T-A-R-G, and you can find the book. People seem to like it a lot. I describe the things we did for the CIA that used to be secret or not secret anymore. I talk about what the ancients used to do with psychic abilities, and we have a chapter on how you can learn to do that. If you work with a friend, your friend and you can work together and mutually develop your ability, and that works very well. That's like what we did at SRI. See, I spent 10 years sitting in the dark interviewing people about their psychic abilities. So it's as though the CIA paid for my psychic development by having me sit in the dark working with different people. That was CIA's gift to me, is he give me that opportunity to spend all of that time learning what psychic abilities really looked like.
Yeah.
And I describe that in my book, The Reality of ESP. The film is called Third Eye Spies, and that describes in detail what we did during our decade of psychic spying. The book is like an event or a happening because we put together all of the people who took part in the experiments, Joe McMoneagle, the great psychic policeman, and the CIA contract monitors, and Nobel Prize winners, and the American astronaut Edgar Mitchell describes psychic experiences in space. So we have a lot of famous, well-qualified people in addition to the researchers who did the work. I'm on camera, and so is my colleague, Hal Putoff. Hal and I are both laser physicists, so the fact that we were both pretty well-known laser people in the 60s made it possible for us to get money from the CIA and NASA in the 70s, in that we were already known as competent people who had a body of knowledge, who were able to do stuff. So even though what we were proposing to do sounded pretty crazy, the Russians were doing it. A book called Psychic Discoveries Behind the Iron Curtain had just been published. So the whole intelligence community in America was very interested in ESP because it was clear the Soviets were a decade ahead of us in the research realm.
Yeah, I know.
So we were able to go forward and investigate how it works and what can be done.
Yeah. And I see we are down to the end of the show here, and we got 20 seconds left. So we thank you very much, Russell. This was very interesting.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm very happy to be with you.
Yeah, this was wonderful.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.